Welcome to Rich Conversations. Today we'll meet up with Polina Zasheva. She was very insightful and passionate, and I really appreciated our conversation. We'd recorded this at Next Door Cafe in Lakeview, which is this cafe/co-working space. There's some background noise, or ambiance, if you will, but it's a great listen. So let's begin. All right, so we have Polina here. Polina, how long have you lived in Chicago?
People often argue about where the city ends. The way I envision the city limits is where the Chicago transit system stops servicing Chicago population. So I moved to a suburb called Schiller Park, right next to Rosemont. It's where Cumberland and Irving Park meet. When I was in high school from Bulgaria. And subsequently, a few years later, obviously, once I graduated college, I came to the city to study at DePaul. So I've been in Chicago proper since college, really. But you could argue that the suburb I grew up in is technically the city, since that's...
It's like the first one.
You can take the Blue Line there, you can take the 80 bus there, the 76. There's a number of options. So the definition is a little blurry, but it's been over a decade. So
you've been here a while, yeah. What neighborhood are you in now?
I currently live in Lincoln Park East, right next to Lakeview.
Okay.
So it's a very interesting part of town because it's very close to the lake and to a number of beaches. So in the summer, it feels like you're on vacation. You can just take a stroll down the lake path and go to any beach you want. It's very close to downtown as well. And there's a number of options to get to this actual downtown area, which is nice. The only thing that I wish was slightly different was perhaps the diversity of the neighborhood.
Okay.
It's very homogeneous, and
Sure.
There isn't as much cultural variety as I would wish, but I think Chicago is known for that, and its segregation and the way that we've planned our neighborhoods and kind of where people choose to locate themselves.
Yeah. What kind of things do you see in your neighborhood? Like what kind of businesses and coffee shops and stuff are around?
Yeah, I think the neighborhood has been changing a lot, especially since I've lived here the last 5 years or so, because even though it's a very developed neighborhood, it's not going through major transformation like other parts of the city, Pilsen, West Loop, etc. It's still improving in a lot of visible ways. They've expanded the Red Line tracks just a few blocks from me on Wilson. In terms of coffee shops, there isn't a lot of diverse, unique ones like you would see in Wicker Park, for example. It's most of the standard Stan's Donuts, Starbucks, kind of a mainstream space, I would say.
That's what I'm kind of, like you have a Target, you have like an Express, like in this area where we're at kind of right now in this space. Yeah, it's like a lot of, what would you call that? Like bigger stores and brands coming in?
Yes, not a lot of, again, diversity in small mom and pop shops, which is what I wish to see more of.
Okay.
But I think some of the cost and the taxes here are prohibitive of that.
It's a nice area.
It's a really nice, safe space. I enjoy living here, but at the same time, I think you can be sheltered from a lot of the city realities that happen in Chicago.
So if you have an open Saturday, how would you choose to spend it?
It depends on the season.
That's a very good point.
Chicago's winters are notorious for how long and difficult they are to sustain through. So in the summer, I love, as I mentioned, just going to the beach. It's just a few blocks from my apartment. A lot of my friends are still in the city, and they also enjoy the beaches, the lake path. So I'm a big runner. I've done the Chicago Marathon 3 times, as you know that. So that path has been very iconic and symbolic of my experience in the city. So I go on that a lot on weekends.
Okay.
And I also, there's a lot of yoga studios in the neighborhood and in Chicago in general. I think there's a big wave of millennials moving towards meditation and mindful living. So I like to explore that space as well and go to group classes with peers and meet people that way. Mm-hmm. And obviously being productive is important. So I recently finished a program at Northwestern. So my Saturdays is a computer science program. My Saturdays were occupied studying and doing coursework for that.
Yeah.
But now that it's over, I can do all the other fun stuff. And that was the winter activity. So I mentioned earlier, seasons matter, right? So in the winter, there is not, it's challenging being outside. I mean, you can still do it, but it takes another level of determination to do that. Yeah. So that's when I choose to kind of to participate in more indoor events and activities.
What kind of things are those?
Like I mentioned, the Northwestern program, just kind of exploring. There's a lot of colleges in the city, I mean a ton, and they all offer postgraduate coursework and opportunities for young professionals to continue educating themselves beyond the traditional college space. So I like to take a lot of different professional development programs and boot camps in coding, project management, product management. So I usually reserve that for the winter. And it's fun because you again get to meet a lot of people that way, a lot of young professionals who are passionate about similar industry trends that you are.
That's really good.
Thanks.
I think that's awesome. Continue to grow and learn, and because the world's changing quickly, and you got to keep up with.
Yeah, I mean, they say that a skill that you acquire today is anymore only good for the next 5 years or so, because technology is developing so fast, and we're constantly automating ourselves out of traditional tasks that we would engage with in our careers or in our daily lives. So maintaining a kind of a continuous learning perspective in your daily life, I think it's important.
Yeah, I agree, totally. So you've ran 3 Chicago marathons?
Yes.
Right? And you're doing these other runs, is there a close community for runners in the city?
Absolutely. Not just runners, but also a number of endurance sports, triathlons as well. There's the Chicago Tri Club. Okay. And a lot of people that are interested in triathlons, or at least one of the events that comprise a triathlon, swimming, running, biking, can be a part of that and meet people from all over the city and people from other states as well who have recently moved, maybe are here temporarily and will go back. So it's really a chance to push yourself beyond what you would traditionally do on your own, and also meet other people. And for running as well, I mean, Feed Fleet has a huge community of runners, and they have running happy hours after work. Almost any location now, there's the big ones I go to are Old Town and Lincoln Park's Feed Fleet. They have women groups for running, so if you rather meet more girls, find new girlfriends, you can do that. There's also more heterogeneous groups.
What's the hardest part about running a marathon?
It's probably practicing self-respect and forgiveness. I think, at least for me, I mean, running it's probably 20% physical. If you're a healthy individual, you can run a marathon if you don't have any major health risks. Where the challenge comes from, and obviously time, it's a time commitment. But beyond that, the biggest, what I would say is 80% of what's required is having, like I said, self-respect and discipline there will be days when you just don't feel good about your performance and when you don't want to do it. And oftentimes when people fall into that, especially in the winter cycle of, kind of being unable to train, they tend to just say, forget it. I'm beyond the point of being able to accomplish this. But if you internalize that in a more positive way and say, it's okay that today didn't go as well as I thought, tomorrow is a fresh day, and I trust that I can accomplish what I set out to accomplish, kind of being forgiving of your limitations and your body's needs, I think is probably the hardest thing to accomplish and to cultivate in yourself.
So you can't drag yesterday's struggles into today. Like each day is a fresh start, and you can't let it be interrupted by yesterday.
I think so. And I think, to me, that's been a challenging perspective to keep in mind and an intention to live by, because we tend to fall victim to what the negative things that happen in our lives in the prior day and let that carry forward in the future. And so I think that, to me, that's one of the harder things. I tend to get very sick in the winter. Just, colds. In Chicago, winters are so hard.
For sure.
Taking the CTA to work every day, you're around sick people all the time. So there's always going to be 1 or 2 or 3 weeks of being sick and unable to get out of bed. And that really puts you back in training and your endurance, especially if you have an early marathon in the year. So being able to kind of practice that respect to your body and say, that's okay, I lost a week, but I still trust in my ultimate goal, and nothing is lost.
When you think of Chicago, what colors do you imagine first?
I probably think about the flag, so light blue and white.
Yeah.
And blue probably is the overwhelming of the two, because I think of the lake, the Cubs. And it's also, actually, now that I think about it, gray is probably a very close second.
Gray. Elaborate.
I see Chicago in such a romantic way in the fall and winter when it's gray outside, and the buildings really bring that forward in a very Gothic way. In the summer, you notice the colors. There's blue buildings and red buildings and black buildings downtown. But in the winter, everything takes this grayish color, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It almost absorbs the sky and the snow.
So you like that?
I like that, absolutely. You cannot live in Chicago if part of you doesn't love winter. It's impossible.
It's getting harder and harder for me.
Well, I love winter through December. It gets between January and now May, that's when it's hard. But there is a very, I don't know the right word for it, but a unique feel of Chicago in the winter when I just think of blues and hot chocolate and whiskey, going to jazz clubs, walking through the city as people are preparing for the holidays, the decoration. I think seeing the city life at night when it's dark out is beautiful. The one negative is, Chicago, even in the summer, after 5 o'clock downtown, it empties pretty fast.
Yeah.
A lot of people go home, and you don't see its beauty as much at nighttime the way you do in the winter. At 5 o'clock, there's so many people out on the streets, even when it's cold. And there's a sense of community and surviving the commute.
Yeah.
Being bundled up. And it forces you to be creative in the way you go about your day and making sure you're experiencing things and not just hibernating for 6 months out of the year.
So how do you, because you, compared to me, like you are commuting every single day. When it gets really cold and you're talking about these gray days in the winter and everybody's bundled up, how do you, enjoy is the wrong word, but what's that commute like?
Well, I think I enjoy...
Is it more miserable than...
Oh, it's very
regular?
miserable.
Okay.
I mean, it's hard because, we're talking about negative 30-degree temperatures -20, -15 with wind chill. And this is for months at a time, right? This isn't a few day thing. It starts in, if we're lucky, January, and it goes through May. But it could start as early as November,
Yeah.
So I guess having like I said, a sense of community around experiencing that challenge with the people around you, I enjoy that. I like people watching, going to the bus.
Yeah.
Everybody has the same expression on their face, and you can kind of, unite in that experience. The one thing I hate, though, is, I put on a bunch of layers in the morning, like 5 shirts, my work jacket, and then probably warm socks, my boot liners, then my boots, then my winter jacket, and my hat. And I walk for 3 minutes. And I wait for 2 minutes. So it's a total of 5 minutes being outside. And then the bus comes. And it's crowded. And there is probably 60 people in a small space.
Yeah.
And everybody's breathing. And everybody's carrying hot coffee with them.
Yeah.
And they smell like toast because those jackets haven't been washed for months at a time. Now it's February, let's say. They've been wearing them since November. And so then, the bus starts. There's traffic. It stops. It starts. You're standing. And you start sweating. So the layers start coming off. You take off your hat. You take off your scarf. You start unbuttoning the jacket. As the bus is moving, as you're balancing a hot cup of coffee. And as soon as you start feeling comfortable, it's time to get off.
Yeah.
So now the same process starts again. You start putting the first layer, the second layer, the jacket, the hat. By that time, half of your coffee is between the layers because you're balancing a moving bus. And you come out and you're freezing now because you've been carrying your warm clothes on the bus. And then you walk for 5 minutes and then you're in the office and you start going through the same routine. And it's exhausting some days, but it's a unique feel that I think few urban locations offer. I mean, I know Boston gets very snowy in the winter, so does New York occasionally, but it's a more mild cold. I think what's unique about Chicago is just the frigid temperatures.
What's your proudest moment as a Chicagoan?
See, I'm not a huge sports person, but I obviously enjoy when Chicago sports teams are successful. I hope my boyfriend doesn't hear me say that ever, but
Because he's a Wisconsin sports fan.
He's a Wisconsin sports fan, but I enjoy seeing the city happy, and I think there's very few things that unite us nowadays, and I think sports is one of those things. And I enjoy seeing people celebrate Chicago. Obviously I think of the big ones, the Cubs winning.
What were you doing the night the Cubs won the World Series?
I was at a friend's house. I watched the game. I was, with my boyfriend, who was very unhappy with what happened. So we walked, about 2 miles back to our apartment, and, everybody was on the street celebrating. It was a warm night. Cars were honking. It was a very happy night for Chicago, I think. And the transformation of that neighborhood of Wrigley that's come as a result of that victory has been phenomenal. I mean, I love that space. It attracts so many families, and it's a good spot year round. I mean, it doesn't have to be restricted or connected to the team, even though that's the primary driver for the development of that area. So again, I don't know that I am proud of that, but I'm also proud of our diversity in politics. I'm proud of the universities we have. I think University of Chicago is such a strong symbol for the city. It carries so much history. I'm very proud of the fact that Barack and Michelle are from Chicago as well. There's a lot of great people I look up to that are from Chicago. Kanye West, for example. So, and now, I mean,
That's
I can
awesome.
keep going. A lot of things. It's an underrated city. I feel part of me feels sad that all these amazing people come out of Chicago and leave.
Uh-huh.
So many comedians. I love The Office, and
There's been a number of
yeah.
Office cast members that came from
From
Second
Second
City
City,
and
yeah.
IO, yeah.
So it brings up a lot of great talent. The city does, but unfortunately they leave, and everybody talks so positively. I recently listened to a Tina Fey interview on Netflix, and
Okay.
she loved her time in Chicago. I don't think she's originally from Chicago, but she studied in the Second City, and she was she spent a big part of her life here. And everybody talks positively, but yet they leave. I wish we could cultivate opportunities for big talent to stay here, kind of like New York, or now Silicon Valley. And there's a number of startups now in the city as well. West Loop has seen a tremendous growth as a result of that. I think Chicago last year was named the #1 spot for starting new companies in technology outside of Silicon Valley. A lot of women entrepreneurs start their ventures here as well. There's a lot of professional organizations that are tailored towards that as well, that really bring to light the number of entrepreneurs and women who are making big change in spaces that have traditionally been male dominated. And I think we don't get enough recognition for that. There's a really good website called Build in Chicago that really brings to the forefront how many companies have come out of here. We often forget about it, like Venmo, for example.
Venmo was in Chicago?
Yeah, Venmo is a Chicago company.
I use that app quite a bit, yeah.
A number of those. And so I think reminding ourselves of that is important.
Yeah.
It's an affordable place to launch a successful venture compared to California and perhaps New York as well. So,
if someone were to visit you from out of town, what restaurant would you take them to?
that's a great question. I think I like the chance to experience other cultures, and you can absolutely do that here. What's unfortunate is that you can't do it in any neighborhood. You have to go to specific locations. So, for example, where I am from, Bulgaria, there is actually a very big Bulgarian community in Chicago, which is not a very well-known fact because Bulgaria is a small country. But, where in the Rosemont area is where a lot of Bulgarians live, and there's a number of Bulgarian restaurants and Bulgarian stores, and just kind of you can feel as being in Bulgaria in a lot of ways. I think that's what I would take someone is there's a restaurant there called Mehanata that serves very traditional Bulgarian cuisine, and it plays traditional Bulgarian music, and it's a nice mix of Turkish and Greek food that not many people have experienced or even have
Really?
thought of trying. And it's close to Mannheim Road, on just kind of on the edge before the west suburbs begin, again, like Rosemont area. I would probably take someone there because I don't know that many people would take a trip to Bulgaria, but again, Chicago offers a chance to be a part of all these different cultures, all within the city.
It's incredible. What's your hidden gem in the city?
Probably the Lake Path. That's where it's not very hidden,
No.
but I think it's underappreciated. So many of my friends have moved west towards neighborhoods like Wicker Park, Logan Square, Lincoln Square, and it's incredible how infrequently they make their way out to the lake and to the path. And every time they do, it's this rediscovery of, wow, we have this amazing park area and amazing ground for biking and running and having picnics that we never think of coming to.
What sound do you most affiliate with Chicago?
Probably wind tunnels. You know,
Really?
going back to that winter feel. So often, I know a lot of us now walk around the city with with our headphones on, and try to eliminate any chance for us to be present and in the moment. But if we were to stop that for a second, if you were to take a walk late fall, October, November, down Jackson, let's say, towards the lake, there are so many pockets that have little spaces between buildings. You can hear the wind so clearly and loud.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think it's again, it brings back that Gothic feel of the city that I think has so much beauty in it, and it's so unique. So I think of that when I think of Chicago, is hearing the wind going between buildings.
Wow.
And I lived downtown when I went to college. I mentioned I went to DePaul, and DePaul has this huge dorm downtown on State and Harrison. It's 20 floors. It houses a number of universities, not just DePaul. So I lived downtown for those 5 years, and it was an enjoyable time to experience that kind of feel. You don't necessarily get that as much in the neighborhoods where the buildings are lower. But you can certainly still hear the wind coming from over the lake. And
What music has influenced you the most during your time in the city?
blues. I think I
Blues.
mentioned that so many times, but I love Chicago blues. I love going to blues bars. There's so many of them coming up now. Some smaller than others. Obviously, the big name that everybody knows is Kingston Mines.
Mhm.
There's the House of Blues obviously houses
Yeah.
a lot of concerts, but I love when blues artists improvise. Like that happens a lot in Kingston Mines. If you go there late at night, you just see people in love with what they do, and it's so inspiring. It carries beyond music. It's to me, it's not even the music itself. It is the passion that the people are putting into that. And Chicago is obviously so famous for its blues, and I also love jazz. There's a number of jazz festivals that happen in Chicago in the fall, in Hyde Park and in Millennium Park. So probably jazz and blues, I would say.
What's a common scene you see in your daily interaction with the city?
Common scene, actually, that's not very positive, what I'm going to say, but we took a trip to Southeast Asia, and we were there for 2 weeks, and what I didn't see there that I saw that really impressed me coming back is people who are struggling with mental illness. You didn't see that a whole lot. You didn't see people walking down the street talking to themselves or yelling or just struggling with a mental health breakdown in some way. I didn't see that. And I didn't notice that I didn't see that until I came back. And I remember coming back, and just within the first 4 days, 5 days, when your impressions are still fresh, seeing so many people who are struggling with mental health and are homeless and don't get the adequate care they need to be reintegrated in society.
That's a really interesting observation.
Yeah.
If you were given secret information that in 1 week Chicago would be destroyed, what's one quality you would keep to rebuild the city?
One quality of the city, I would probably keep the Chicago transit system set up. I think it needs a lot of improvement, but I think that the CTA is like the heart of Chicago in so many ways. It's lifeline. You can get to so many parts of the city very cost effectively using the CTA. So if there is a way to just maintain the integrity of that and rebuild it, if the city was destroyed, I would do that. I think we need to be more mindful of ensuring that CTA options are available going south and west as much as they are coming from south and west to the city.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to come to the city than it is to get out of the city. But nonetheless, I think that's a big staple of Chicago that's worth maintaining and investing in more.
What's one thing you would do to improve your neighborhood?
That's a good question. I think I alluded to that earlier. Probably diversify it more. As I mentioned, Chicago prides itself in being a big startup hub in technology, but I think we have an opportunity to also offer incentives for more creative businesses, cultural, cuisine, restaurants, or even some, just allowing people to showcase their talent and their culture in ways that others can participate with. Like I mentioned, especially in Lincoln Park, taxes are so high, and I think that's preventative of small shops to be brought on and to see.
Because they have to pay the lease.
Yes, it's expensive
Rent,
to pay
yeah.
the lease, to pay the the taxes, the rent, whatever it is. The overhead is costly, which is why we see so much mainstream shops here. They
Yeah.
just opened the first ever Lululemon store in Lincoln Park that is kind of an experiential store. It's
Okay.
a new brand for Lululemon. It's a very high-end chain
Yeah,
yoga
that can
store,
afford-
and so that's great, but it's also, I feel like we can do better than that and offer more diverse options to people that aren't the traditional big chains you mentioned, Express. And if we have been able to find a good way to create this startup hub for technology, I believe we can do the same for non-tech like businesses as well. I don't have a vision as to what that is, but I think that's something that I would like to improve more in Chicago.
Okay. When people learn you're from Chicago, how do they respond and what's your reaction?
It's funny because I can never truly claim I'm from Chicago because I have this damn accent, right? So every time I say I'm from Chicago, people look at me and they say, well, but where are you really from?
Okay.
So I can never, I'm deprived of this opportunity to call Chicago my home because of the way I sound and the way I look. But I do feel like it's my home. It's absolutely 100% my home. And every time I say I'm from Chicago, I get a really positive response, followed by, what about the crime?
Okay.
Which is so sad because crime is a big problem in the city. I think it's in a lot of ways stems back to our education system. Most of that crime is committed by youth who should be in school but aren't for a number of reasons that are beyond their control. So it's definitely a close second to that's an amazing city. I love the music, I love the food. There's so much, the neighborhoods are such a staple of Chicago. But that damn crime, it always comes back to that same, and I think that's why people leave. That's why people move out, is because they're afraid of bringing up children in that environment. And it's a vicious cycle, and I hope we soon figure out how to get out of it. For myself, the one thing I can control is my life and my decisions, and I absolutely intend to bring up a family in the city and give back to the community as much as I can. But it has to be a collective decision. I think so many people fear for their kids' safety and perhaps depriving them of a quality education, so they leave.
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous trend.
When you feel overwhelmed or need a mental escape, but you can't leave the city, where do you go to clear your mind?
To not repeat myself and say I go running on the lake path, something that just popped in my head was Chinatown. I mean, it's just one example of experiencing a completely different culture, cuisine, life, all within the city limits. I mean, you have Little Italy, you have Chinatown, you have my, Bulgarian neighborhood kind of space. So I like to go to those neighborhoods that are Ukrainian village that are very centered around the culture that started that community. And they're Devon Street. I'm not sure if you've ever gone down Devon Street.
Yeah, I have.
That was a big spot in high school. My friends and I used to go there a lot, but amazing Asian spot, Indian food and Pakistani food, and there's just like a variety of cuisines authentic food that you can experience just, a few blocks down.
Great answer. What's something you're curious about recently?
That's a great question. I don't know that I can really answer it right away. There's so much I'm curious about. I talked about mental health a little bit earlier, and I'm very interested in learning more about the ways mental health is impacting societies and economies in general. Something I recently read is that we don't actually understand a lot of our health strains actually comes from emotional distress. I mean, we all know, just within my circle of friends, I know so many people in their 20s who have fought and survived cancer. And to me, that's unprecedented. And so many people say it's not that the rates of cancer have increased, it's that now we have better ways of catching cancer early.
Okay.
And I think part of that is true, but I think a big part of that is that we do have higher rates of cancer. And I have become more and more curious on the impact of emotional strain and stress on our overall health. My work is very stressful right now, and as a result, I think living in that environment where you're constantly racing against unimaginable target or competition is adversely impacting our physical well-being. And I would like to learn more about that, and I think we're not doing enough to understand that. We get stressed out a lot more.
Yeah.
Not to mention the impact of social media on kids and how much stress that puts on us trying to compete with each other for having the nicest car, the nicest house, eating at the nicest restaurants, always feeling inadequate in some way because someone appears to have it better than us. I think that kind of stress and mental strain could actually be linked in a lot of ways to increased rates of these awful terminal illnesses that people in their 20s are now fighting more and more.
I think that's a really great thing to be curious about.
Yeah, I mean, I feel it with myself too. That's why I talked about doing yoga and being part of, not so much the yoga movement itself. I know people may have conflicting feelings about it, but the idea of being mindful, of being present in the moment, it sounds like such a cliche, but it is so difficult to actually accomplish. Take off your headphones when you're walking down Jackson Street and listen for those wind tunnels, because it's the moment, and that's the only thing we can truly control right now. And often we have this illusion that we can control what's going to happen 5 years from now or 10 years from now, and it's false, because what's going to happen 5 years from now is determined by how you manage right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Within the past 5 years of living here, what personal realization has improved your outlook on life the most?
I don't know how to relate this to the city.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
It can just be about you.
Yeah, I think I talked just now a little bit more about that, but that idea of being present and understanding that all you can control is right now. 5 years ago, I had this internship, and I remember being asked, in 5 years from now, where would you like to be to ensure that you're to be happy with where your career is at, and what does that mean in your personal life as well, kind of like your 5-year forecast. And so many interns, it's a finance internship. So many people are driven by money.
Yeah.
And a lot of the interns' responses were things like, I would like to have a boat, or I would like to have a condo downtown, or I would like, in my case, I said, I was 20 at the time. I thought, well, in 5 years I'll be married, and I will, probably have a job that's making me a ton of money.
Heck
and
yeah.
I'm, kicking ass, right? And then 5 years go by really fast.
It does.
It does. And you look back and you think, what did I do? What happened? Did I make a wrong turn somewhere? Or am I on the track to accomplish what I'm accomplishing right now? Maybe.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And what are the things I did to get there? And again, the 5 years, it's hard. But now that I'm in my job, very well paid, it's exactly what I want to do. I'm happy with my career. Where I thought I wanted to be, I am there in a lot of ways. And I cannot say that that's what's making me happy. It's not
Sounds
the thing.
elusive.
Yes, it's not. You get there and you realize, well, I got everything I've ever wanted. Like all my dreams, and so few people can say that.
Yeah.
All my dreams come true. There's nothing that I can be unhappy about. And yet you realize that when your dreams are so founded on these material things and these fake aspirations of getting to some point in life, starting a business or traveling to another country, you do it, and the satisfaction it doesn't feel as culminating as you would expected it to have felt.
Okay.
So that's why I think creating being more mindful about living with a purpose right now. Every minute counts. Every day is an opportunity. That's been my realization, that there is a lot more beauty in the process of getting somewhere than getting there itself.
What's something you dream of accomplishing within the next 5 years then?
There you go. We're staying with the theme, huh? I want to move away from setting goals that are, we always talk about setting goals that are measurable. How do you know that you're accomplishing things if you can't measure progress? So in staying with the theme of being mindful and focusing on the now, it's really hard to measure that. How do you know you are being present? So if I say that I want to accomplish that, I want to learn to live a more simple life, that's what I want to accomplish in 5 years. But you cannot put a timestamp to that. There isn't a day in time when you say, okay, right now I am no longer living outside of the present. It's a continual effort.
Yeah, it's like a daily, continual effort.
So that's why, in answering your question, anything I say would contradict my intention of being that
That's true.
way.
So then would you say, like, in 5 years, you want to look around and being like, I'm way better at this, at being mindful, right?
I want to, in 5 years, I want to be happy. That's probably my goal. You have to
Like
define happy.
Yeah.
What is it being happy? I think part of it is being comfortable with yourself, being comfortable with who you are, with the choices you're making. I think happy is a very complex state of mind and being to become.
Yeah.
It means being okay with setbacks, being okay with things not going the way you thought they would go, and finding the beauty in that. So that's what I mean by being happy, is having a more holistic view of life than just accomplishing things like buying a condo, having a baby, having a dog.
Checkpoints and milestones. Yeah.
So I would love to find that.
Well, I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. That went on for a long time, so thanks for your patience.
It was good.
I enjoyed
absolutely.
it so much.
Thanks again for listening to Rich Conversations. Have a magical day.